Yesterday I was thinking about something and I arrived to a very interesting conclusion. I mean, I feel like I've known this for quite a while now, but we are always attracting what we are. You know, the energy that we embody, it attracts accordingly, right? And when I say energy, I'm referring specifically to you know, emotions, energetic states, energetic signatures, all that kind of stuff, beliefs. Beliefs also manifest energetically, emotionally in the body as well, right? Um, so we are always attracting what we are, right? Now, the thing is, if what we are is what we don't actually want to be, then what we are attracting is what we don't actually want. So I was sitting with that yesterday and I was like, this is very interesting, right? And I apply it to my days less conscious of them, at least like a decade ago, but my days of codependency, right? There was a point in my life, story time. There was a point in my life, at least a decade ago, um, where I was very codependent, right? I thought that I needed to this was before I recognized my self-worth as intrinsic. This was back when I tied my self-worth to the external, right? Whether it's a person, a thing, a job, whatever it was, right? And so therefore I wouldn't a majority of all of this has to do with conscious awareness. I personally believe that the more consciously aware you are, the better experience of life you're going to have, right? Because if you're not aware that you're doing things that you don't want to do because you're trying to get things that you might not even realize you don't want, then you're just going to keep doing that and you're going to keep repeating that pattern. And that's just the way that that's going to be, right? But let's look at this whole idea of what you are is what you attract, which is true. Your energy attracts accordingly. Um, But if you are what you don't want to be, which I've been there, I've done things that I didn't want to do, right? That in and of itself creates and projects a very specific energetic signature. Um, then you're going to attract what you don't want. So think about it, right? Um, in my days of codependency, I did things as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. So basically, I did things to get things rather than doing things for the enjoyment. But the things that I did to get things were things that I didn't want to do. And I now realize that. And it's wild how you can go through a decade of life, come out on the other side, and be like, wow, fuck all of that. Fuck all of you. You know, I didn't want to do a single one of those things. I take responsibility for it, not pointing the finger, not blaming anybody else. But it's just totally fascinating to me how we do things to get things, and oftentimes things that we don't want to do, right? So again, we attract what we are. What we do is basically a part of what we are. It's an extension of what we are because that's just the way that it is. Order of events. Who I am, what I do, what I get. Who I am comes first. If I see myself without realizing it though, yeah. So now I realize that I didn't realize back then that I was somebody energetically in lack. And I thought that I needed to do things to get the validation and approval and worth from the external. And of course, I lived a very specific life as a result of that. I did a bunch of things that I didn't want to do. Now, when you do absolutely anything, I mean, I would argue that everything that you do, you get something from, whether it's a thought, an emotion, or a full on fucking physical experience. Maybe it's even a product, right? Maybe you get a product. I don't know. But we are always attracting based on what we are, based on our energy. And so if I'm doing things that I don't want to do based on who I am, what I am, right? I am Chris, or I'll do it as past tense. I was, I mean, I've always been Chris, but I was this person who was living in the energetic signature of codependency, which I would argue is lack, right? You don't fully see yourself, you don't fully have a developed sense of self, and therefore you are sourcing self from the external. You are tying your worth through validation and approval from others and whatever else it might be to the external. You don't have a developed sense of intrinsic nature, right? You look at yourself and you're very confused. You're like, um, there are like fragments in there, and I don't really know what to do with those fragments. So I'm going to seek externally and source from the external to get what may be missing, right? The sun is introducing itself to my face right now. And so then, if you attract based on what you are, and what you are is what you don't want, then you're going to attract what you don't want. I really think that it's that simple. I do. And I've had firsthand experience, right? Because, um, like, I have said yes to a bunch of things that I know I would have rather said no to, right? And when you agree to do things that you don't want to do, that in and of itself already sets up the energetic dynamic for just a bunch of bullshit to come into your life. That's the reality of that. Um, and that's really just how it works, right? So if you find yourself codependent, repeating a pattern of codependency from whatever trauma happened in your life, right? And you find yourself doing things, for instance, maybe you don't like being alone, you fear being alone, you just don't want to be alone, right? So what might you do at that point? I've had experience in this, by the way. um, at that point you might do, well, first let's get to the being part of it, right? Who are you? What are you? You're being this person of fear of being alone, right? If you're desperate for a relationship, like severely desperate, you're probably just going to take the first person that you find, and they might be abusive. Who knows, right? If you fear being alone, if your energetic signature consists of fear of being alone, what are you going to do? And by the way, like it's desperation. What are you going to do? You're going to desperately seek somebody, anybody, anybody, so that you're not alone, right? So your energy is pretty much in desperation. You need somebody in your presence, right? Okay, so you find somebody. Now you're not alone. But you're not actually doing what it is that you want to do, because you don't realize that you don't want to do that, because you don't have the level of conscious awareness as a result of all of the bullshit that would come with years of being with that person, and all of the boundary violations and all of the unhealthy dynamics, which would lead to resentment, and you recognizing that you're just repeating a pattern of being somebody that's not authentic to you, doing things that are not authentic to you, and getting things that you don't actually want. Fear of being alone. Attracting a person based on fear of being alone. What do you get? You get what you don't want because you're vibrating in lack. in fear. And so you're just trying to fill up a fucking hole. You're trying to fill up a fucking void so that you don't feel alone anymore. And you don't have to sit in that fear of being alone. So what do you attract? You're not going to attract quality because the fear and everything else that comes with it is a very low energy experience, right? There is a difference between quality of relationship as a result of conscious awareness of what it is that an individual actually wants and desperation of trying to fill a void of fucking fear of being alone simply because the fear is there, rather than doing the work to work through it and clearing that out and not attracting absolutely anybody. When you are what you don't want to be, but you're unaware of it because you don't realize that you're just living in survival and you don't actually want to be that, you're going to attract accordingly. And with that, you're going to attract what you don't want. And that's the reality of it. It's very fascinating how this has unfolded for me throughout the years, because like recognizing my worth as intrinsic and not being like, oh, I don't have to just fill my life with these fucking people that are unhealthy, which I have before, right? No names. But that's why the game changes so much when you recognize your worth as intrinsic. Because previously you were tying your fucking worth to things out there. And now you're like, oh, wait a second. I've been misaligned. I've been what I don't want to be, and I've been attracting what I don't want as a result of that. Yeah, no, I'll pass on that.